A lot of people have asked me to talk about the roots of anti-blackness in South Asian or Indian society, and I can identify 4 factors.
Dark skin is, unfortunately, it's the biggest irony, to be honest, when you see colorism in India, because, if you really want to argue, then you can say that, well, actually,
problems first.
So do my Indian parents finally accept my half-black children? Let's get into it. So last I left off, I haven't spoken to my dad in over a decade. I think the last time I spoke to him was in 2013.
Brother, before you climb up on that high horse and make that statement, let me also correct you. Black people are also racist towards whites. Indian people are also racist towards Indian people.
It's funny seeing Asians in my comments telling me to stop pandering, stop kissing their asses, stop betraying your people. Because what you really mean is stop talking. And I need to make something clear. I'm not betraying anybody. I'm not performing for anyone.
Because everyone watches Bollywood. Also, I specifically said South Asian, not South Indian. Bollywood, so far, has only been having...
Hi friends, I hadn't planned on making another video right now, but Indian people are coming for me in my comments. And, so I know I'm on the right track with what I'm saying.
You guys wanted my love story. Ooh, I got hair in my eye. I'm going to go ahead and give you my love story. So my husband and I met in high school. I was a sophomore. He was a senior. I was 15. He was 18. He got held back a year. That's why he was still in high school.
Imagine being rejected, not because of who you are, like your profession, like what you are capable of doing, not because of your name, but because you are black, just because of your skin color. Now, being told that your skin makes you less acceptable, less beautiful, or even less worthy of love. Now, listen to these stories and you begin to understand why many black people say the pain is little and is too much. I mean, being pushed away from families, being pushed away from relationships and communities because of the race is something nobody should have to experience, should have to endure. But this conversation, I think, is much bigger than India. It's about confronting anti-blackness wherever and whenever it exists. And until people are willing to face it honestly, the conversation remains. How many black people must be banished before enough is enough? Let's dive into this. Let's watch, and then I'll come back for more commentaries. If you are new to this channel, please subscribe. Otherwise, yeah, let's watch.
A lot of people have asked me to talk about the roots of anti-blackness in South Asian or Indian society, and I can identify 4 factors. 1, the internal caste system, where Dalits and Adivasis are traditionally much darker or blacker skinned, and Brahmins tend to be lighter skinned. I am obviously an exception to this one. 2, the Indian Ocean slave trade. Now, there has been an African diaspora in India from as early as the 7th century, many of whom were enslaved within India. So anti-blackness dates back as far as then and earlier with the caste system. 3, colonialism. Proximity to power, to whiteness, to the British was afforded more to those with lighter skin. Those with darker skin were perceived as inferior, and the term coolie was more reserved for them. It's not that this didn't apply across the board, but there was greater discrimination to those with darker skin. Colonialism is a hierarchy, not a binary, and the British would play off one group against another. Lastly, modern, global and Indian beauty standards. Fair and Lovely, Fair and Handsome being a very good example. These skin lightening creams, or even the word fair meaning beautiful and light skinned. I once saw an advert where a guy who looked exactly like me couldn't get a girlfriend, then he was given Fair and Handsome and the girl loved him. That broke my heart. So these are the 4 foundations of Indian anti-blackness. It runs quite deep.
dark skin is, unfortunately, it's the biggest irony, to be honest, when you see colorism in India, because if you really want to argue, then you can say that, well, actually, they are the original Indians, right? The darker skinned Indians are the original Indians. But unfortunately, it is something that, people look down on. Anti-blackness, for that reason, is an issue in India. And, if you're dark skinned, you're called the word Kala, which means black. So, yeah, it's quite shameful, to be honest.
So do my Indian parents finally accept my half-black children? Let's get into it. So last I left off, I haven't spoken to my dad in over a decade. I think the last time I spoke to him was in 2013. I don't need him in my kids' lives. He disowned me a long time ago, or I felt he disowned me, even though I felt like he wanted to communicate with me, but he didn't want to own up to the fact that he has half black grandchildren. He would tell people I'm off somewhere studying. The kids didn't exist. There was no pictures of me in this house. There's no pictures of the kids in this house. Anytime I would see one of his friends, oh, how's school? Bro, I'm married. But anyways, yeah, I don't need that in my life. You'll learn more about my upbringing with my dad and my stepmother in another video. There's a lot there. Anyway, so now let's get into my mom. I tried. Guys, I tried. And I'm like, okay, let's see if she changed. And I would use little triggers to see how she would react. There were 3 things that I'm like, wow, you can still do this to this day? So one was my 21-year-old hurt his Achilles in December. He got hurt. I told Instagram, Facebook, all of that. So my mom follows me on Facebook. So she read it. And I also told my sister, who told my mom. My mom writes me 4 days after it happened. And she was like, she wrote me on Facebook Messenger. She's like, is, Elijah okay? I was like, he's okay. He's in a lot of pain. She wrote me 2 days after that message and gave me a thumbs up emoji. A thumbs up. Okay, whatever. So I decided to visit my sister in Maryland, and because she just had a baby and I wanted to see my nieces. There's 2 of them. So I went there with my oldest daughter, who was her favorite when I was younger. She was literally like, give me her and I want to raise her again. Like she was her daughter because, apparently she didn't raise me and my sister right. Yeah. Anyways, so I brought her to Maryland to see her grandmother because she also wanted to see her uncle and her aunt and all of that good stuff. And my mom, the only thing she really said to my daughter was hi. There was no conversation. There was no, oh, how's school? Or what are you doing? Are you working? There was no trying to get to know her granddaughter at all. And I'm like, that's crazy. You would think she wants to get to know her grandchild. Like, who wouldn't want to get to know your grandchild? If I had a grandchild, I want to know everything about that child. But yeah, she really wasn't trying to talk to that child. And it was very disheartening to see. Very disheartening. I'm like, wow, okay. I'm going to have to get to a part 2 because there's not enough room in this video for this.
Brother, before you climb up on that high horse and make that statement, let me also correct you. Black people are also racist towards whites. Indian people are also racist towards Indian people. And Indian people are also racist to black people. And white people are also racist to black people and Indian people and colored people. Everybody's racist. There's a whole bunch of racism undercover when everybody gathers amongst their own around the shisanyama or the braai or the curry pot. Everybody's amongst their own. They're racist. I know because I float in amongst all the other groups. I don't just stick to my own group, so I know what goes on. Let's be honest for once in South Africa. Stop calling white people racist, stop calling black people racist, stop calling Indian people racist. Just admit South Africans have a racist problem.
Because everyone watches Bollywood. Also, I specifically said South Asian, not South Indian. Bollywood, so far, has only been having actors that look white, which is very problematic because Bollywood is so popular. Not only do South Asians watch it, a lot of people from different countries watch Bollywood movies. And the representation in those movies is so problematic because there are people in my comment section who are foreigners, non-South Asians, who tell me that they did not know that Indians like me existed, meaning Indians of my skin tone or darker than me existed. Only after we started putting ourselves on the internet did they think, oh wow, there are brown and dark skinned Indians, South Asians? Why is it not there in Bollywood movies? There is colorism everywhere. But the reason why I hold Bollywood to such a high standard and I talk about them and I attack them on my page is because how popular they are, how much power they hold. Because people watch Bollywood movies and make their assumptions about us. By us, I mean the rest of South Asia, the rest of India, and they think that we look like those people, those actors, those white looking actors, and they think that that's what South Asians look like. Nope. South Asia is very, very diverse. India is very diverse, but we don't have any representation. In my own country, I don't have representation. And Hollywood is doing a much better job at that. Which I think, like, that's weird.
Hi friends, I hadn't planned on making another video right now, but Indian people are coming for me in my comments. And, so I know I'm on the right track with what I'm saying. But what I want to talk about in this specific video is Indian people and anti-Black racism specifically. So whether this is within the country of India, or whether this is when Indian people immigrate to any part of the world, whether it be on the African continent, in North America, South America, wherever, Indian people have, and again, I'm not saying every single Indian person, but I'm talking about Indian people generally, our society, our culture, the belief systems that Indian people hold, etc. Indian people are extremely, extremely racist, especially towards Black people. And if you take a Black person who has been around Indian people for any period of time, Black people pick up on this. It's something that is, this is not a secret. Whether you're talking to, say African students who study in India, which there are African students who are there, or whether you're talking about, say, Kenyans. There's a large population of Kenya that are Indian people that have immigrated to that country, or South Africa, or Canada, or, the United States, whatever. But Black people pick up on Indian people's racism because it is quite apparent. It's something that that is there. It's obvious. So I'm just going to give you an example of me, my family, and the Indian people in South Africa. When I grew up there, I spent the first 12 years of my life under apartheid. So we had servants, maids, cooks, gardeners, etc. And all of these people were Africans. They were Black people. And all of the Indians in South Africa had servants. Okay, they were all Black. Now, how were these servants treated? They were treated as subhuman. They were not considered to be human beings with feelings. They drank out of different cups. So Indian people would not share their table with the servants, who were an integral part of their household. They took care of their children. They drove them everywhere. They cooked for them. But they had to eat off of separate dishes. They could not sit on the furniture. They, say for example, when we left our home and we traveled, so we lived in Pietermaritzburg, we traveled to Durban on the weekends, holidays, whatever. Our maid would come with us. She was not allowed to sleep on or sit on our furniture or sleep on our furniture, so she had to sleep on the floor. These are things that all Indian people did in South Africa. And now I'm just talking about South Africa. I'm not talking about, say, when Indian people immigrate to other countries. But this is true even in first generation Indians. Because say if an Indian person had to marry a Black person, 9 times out of 10, that Indian person's family is going to completely disown the Indian person who married a Black person. Now, Indian people generally, they want Indian people to marry within their they want Indian people to marry other Indian people, and then they even go into they want, the same caste, and they even have subcastes and all of this stuff. So, but if an Indian person marries a white person, or say an Asian person, it's not considered to be as heinous of an act as if an Indian person married a Black person. So this can be tied to the caste system because, like I mentioned in my previous video, Indian people are racist towards other Indian people. And some of this is based on skin color. It's not entirely based on skin color, but there is a factor that is, that is apparent in that. So Ava DuVernay made a movie called Origin, and it's based on Isabel Wilkerson's book Caste, which somebody just pointed out. And it's very difficult for me to talk about these very heavy topics in 10 minutes. So I can't cover everything, but Indian people are inherently racist as a culture and as a society. And then within that racism, there is a hierarchy. So yes, while an Indian society might be racist towards Western people, Western culture, white people, etc., just like Vivek Ramaswamy making that comment about how, he made all these disparaging comments about, Americans. And he was talking about white Americans, how they're not as smart and blah, blah, blah. These are not uncommon things that Indian people say within themselves. I have been privy to these conversations in whether it's, say a friend situation or families or extended families or just in my Indian community. These are very common beliefs that most all Indian people will espouse. They will say things like, well, white people have no culture. Their food is horrible. They just go on and on and on. But when it comes to Black people specifically, Indian people have extremely racist views about Black people. And it doesn't matter how nice this Black person is, how educated they might be. None of those things matter. And that's why I say that a lot of Indian people, they align themselves with a very far right-wing kind of Trump ideology. So you might take somebody from, say, America, who is a Trumpster, and they espouse all these very racist views. And you could take an Indian person, and in many respects, those views are going to align because Indian people generally tend to hold very racist views. It goes back to the caste system, yes, but it also ties into other aspects because, as I pointed out before, there are the so-called untouchables in India, and Indian people are racist towards them as well. So this is all a very, these are complicated things, and I'm just trying to do my best to share these ideas because we are in terrible times right now in the United States and in the world generally. So I guess Indian people, if you guys want to come for me, come for me. I am not saying anything that's untrue. This is the truth, and I think it's kind of an open secret.
You guys wanted my love story. Ooh, I got hair in my eye. I'm going to go ahead and give you my love story. So my husband and I met in high school. I was a sophomore. He was a senior. I was 15. He was 18. He got held back a year. That's why he was still in high school trying to earn his credits back. Now, I thought he was talking to somebody else when the school year started because there was this girl that sat in front of me actually and was like, he would talk to her and giggle and all that stuff. So I wasn't really paying attention to him. I actually liked this other kid that was in the class, which I had very low self-confidence. So yeah, I thought I had no chance with anybody. Turns out he wasn't talking to that person, and there was a play that we did, Rumpelstiltskin, in high school, and one day he came up behind me and put his arms around me. I was like, oh, okay. And then we kind of exchanged some notes, some letters, and I thought he was going to invite me to prom. So I went and did this whole elaborate scheme with my aunt on being able to go to prom. Well, he ended up taking this other girl to prom, and how I found out, because I really didn't pry even after prom was done, was she gave him oatmeal raisin cookies on his birthday. He was standing by the door and he hugged her and all this other stuff. And I'm sitting here going, I thought he liked me. Well, eventually that day I ended up crying because I was like, oh my gosh, I really like him. I made a fool of myself. Like, what did I just do? His best friend saw me because we were all friends and told him that I was crying. And he was like, she's crying? Like, did she really like me that much? Yeah, fool, I did. Since then, I do not buy oatmeal raisin cookies, not willingly. We ended up talking and we got together. It ended shortly after that, and my dad found all those notes. He ended up sending me to India. I went with him super short notice, maybe like a day or two before he was supposed to go to India by himself. And I ended up going with him. I was supposed to be left there, of course, like the majority of Indian little girls that misbehave get sent to India. Well, I ended up coming back and I broke up with him. He was heartbroken that I broke up with him. He ended up going out with a friend of mine, and fast forward a few months, they were still together. She had moved to another state. I was listening to the song Back at One in the car, driving to school. I was like, you know, I made a really big mistake. I really still like this guy. So I went to his house and I told him I still care for him. We got back together and I ended up moving to the other side of Houston. But lucky for me, his job was literally a few blocks away from where I was living. I went to his job to hang out. I so say had a job, but it was a sales job. You don't get hourly. My parents really didn't care. One day I stayed out a little too late and I was telling my husband, I was like, oh, it'd be horrible if my dad was parked up in the parking lot. He was parked up in the parking lot. I got out the car, I saw him, and I was like, oh my God, I cannot go home. I am not going to make it out of this one. So he was like, no, take this box and pretend like we were out selling or whatnot. I was like, you don't understand. This is not going to go well for me. Well, I got back in his car and we left. So basically I ran away from home. And I called my mom. Told her kind of the situation, or probably fibbed just a little bit. And I ended up going to Utah. So me and him were still together. We talk on the phone and whatnot. My mom was pretty cool about it. Well, I ended up convincing her to move to Houston. You know, of course, it was selfish reasons. But yeah, she moved to Houston. She still didn't like my husband. There was all kind of different drama between them. You already know. A few months later, after my mom moved to Houston, there was still a lot more drama between my mom, my dad, me, everybody. Drama, drama, drama. I actually ended up running away from home again. Moved in with my husband and his brother. So I'm 17. He was 20 at the time. I was gone from October of 2000 to April of 2001. I got a job and I guess I got caught. So one of them found me. He was like a close friend to my mom and knew me. And he was like, you gotta go home. I'm like, no, I don't wanna go home. Went to juvie for a few hours. My mom came and got me. At this time, I'm 4 months pregnant. My mom found out when I went home that night. She's like, you can't do this, have an abortion. You can't have a baby with a black man. He's gonna knock you up and leave you and go to some other girl and knock her up and leave. Yeah, you know, the stereotypical answer some of us get when we are with black guys. She told me to get an abortion. I said no. A few months later, you know, I had my son right before I turned 18 because I was hoping he would be here after I turned 18 so I could move out, but you know, didn't happen that way. So had my son, turned 18 3 weeks later, and moved out. Now we have been together for 24 years and have 9 kids together.
Welcome back. Now, after watching everything all the way to the end, I mean, you can imagine loving someone only to discover their family sees your blackness, your skin color as something to reject, as a reason to say, no, not here. Now, these stories are really painful, but they reveal what happens when prejudice, you know, hides behind tradition, behind family expectations, or social pressure. And honestly, black people deserve to, you know, discuss this thing openly without pretending the pain is not real or it doesn't exist. So before we get to the main messages, the main themes discussed in this video, please, if you are new to the channel, give it subscribe. You can also, you know, like the video if you may find any value, and please don't forget to share whatever you think is worth discussing down in the comments. Whatever you say is part of the conversation. Now, moving forward to the main messages. Firstly, I think it shows that anti-blackness can exist alongside colorism within the South Asian community. Now, the discussion connects darker skin with stigma, and it describes how caste, historical slavery, colonialism, and beauty standards can shape ideas about, light skin to be like more desirable. Of course, I don't know if it has to be like that. I mean, whether with meaning like black people, like the words trying to mean black people or dark are used as insults, that tells us how deeply color can become detached to ideas of worth. And secondly, the stories show that the anti-blackness is not always loud or it's not always obvious. Sometimes it appears throughout, through maybe family rejection, assumption about black men, discomfort with interracial relationships, or refusal to fully recognize black family members. Now, one woman in the video clearly described being told to have an abortion just because she was carrying a child with a black man. I mean, just look at that. Hating even the unborn baby just because that baby is having genes belonging to black people, and that child became part of the family that stayed together for decades. Like, yeah, the abortion didn't happen. That is powerful, because prejudice can include decisions that affect generations. Yeah, I think it kind of does. Thirdly, representation is something that, should be taken seriously, is something that matters. People criticize Bollywood for often presenting a narrow image of what Indian or South Asian people look like, especially when darker skinned people feel invisible in their own media, in their own movies, in their own drama, their own comedy, these things like Z World, all those things. And this thing, it really matters beyond entertainment. Movies can influence how outsiders imagine communities, how outsiders look at communities. If in your movies you are portraying black people as worthless, as not wealthy, like in all your movie you never show a black person to be somebody committed to love, in all your movie you never show a black person to be somebody driving a good car. Always they are just walking barefoot, you're even portraying them as thieves, as gangs. That can send an image to other people like, yeah, I think black people are not worth it. Now, imagine being from a diverse country, yet rarely see people who look like you represented as beautiful, successful, desirable, or worthy on the screen. So that absence can, I think, reinforce colorism and distort the wider world is a picture on how people see black people. Fourthly, we have to recognize that black people are not responsible for fixing someone else's prejudice by becoming more acceptable. They don't have to hurt themselves just to look acceptable. A black person can be educated, can be kind, can be, successful, can be loving, can be everything, can still face, can still, be, more successful, can have more money. But because of their color as black people, they can still face rejection. It doesn't make sense. That's not fair. So that is why these personal stories really matter, because they move the conversation to real human consequences. Okay, people are facing this in every day. But there's another important point. Confronting anti-blackness does not require like hating Indian people or any other race. It means telling the truth about the harm of attitudes, and whenever you see them, you need to challenge those attitudes and refusing to normalize them, because there are moments where it becomes normal. Okay, to see people hating black people, to see people talking bad things about other people, and then we see, oh, it's just normal. No, that's not the thing. Fourthly, and maybe, the last thing, I think should be the point number 5. The answer has to be accountability and change. People must hold each other, including themselves, accountable. You see, families can question all the beliefs. Like, okay, our parents told us this. Our parents made us believe this, but is it true? Communities can challenge, colorism. Media can broaden representation. It's high time white people can be represented in Bollywood movies. Black people can be well represented as well in Bollywood movies. Just the same. Okay? Not that every time you portray a black person is when somebody, there's an issue, a problem, he's ending in I mean, it doesn't make sense. So individuals can choose dignity over prejudice. They can choose peace over conflict. They can choose peace over division, because black people should never have to prove they deserve love, they deserve respect, they deserve to be, in marriage, opportunity, or some sort of belonging. It doesn't make sense. And honestly, nobody should be banished from a family or treated as a lesser human being simply because of their skin color, simply because they're black. So when you hear these stories, do not just focus on the controversy that, these guys, no. We need to look at the human cost, the children affected, because these black people have, people they care of, okay, they take care of. Okay, the children are being affected, the relationships are damaged, and people are forced to carry rejection they never deserved, they never did anything to deserve. Because the goal is not division. I think the goal is some sort of truth. Okay, it is recognizing that anti-blackness can exist, and that it can hurt deeply. It can have some emotional wounds in people, maybe permanently. Okay, there are people who got hurt like years ago, they are still feeling that inside them. So that confronting it is necessary. Okay, if we want a world where blackness is never treated as something to fear, something to hide, something to despise, or to apologize for, and maybe that is the little message we really need to have in this video. Black people are not asking for special treatment. They are asking for the same dignity that every other people have, every other people deserve. White people deserve, Asians deserve, anyone else deserve, Indians deserve. Why? They are all human beings. So that should never be unbearable. It should never be taken as something normal. It should be normalized to see everyone equal. It should be normalized to see black people just like you see white people, you see Asians, you see Indians, you see Latinos, you see everyone else. So I hope that but here's the thing. Yeah, there will be people who will forever never take black people as people, and they will see the results for that. There are white Americans who never regarded black people as people. So many things are happening. So whenever people don't prioritize love and they prioritize hatred towards other people, it backfires. It will always backfire. So anyway, I don't know what your take is. Let's discuss down in the comments below. If you are new to the channel, please give it a like, subscribe, and see you next time. I'm proud of you.